Construction of the vault began in the spring of 2061, when the workers broke ground on what was to be both a refuge and an experiment. For 8 long years the project pressed on, its steel halls and reinforced chambers slowly taking shape beneath the earth. But in December of 2069, the echo of hammers fell silent. A work stoppage cut the endeavor short, leaving the vault unfinished in ways that would later prove deliberate. The design called for a community of 475 souls, sealed away for nearly 4 decades. Yet unlike other vaults, this one was built upon a cruel twist. Every essential role, doctor, technician, teacher, even quartermaster, was left unassigned. Instead, the overseer alone had the power to appoint positions, shaping society at will. Only 3 names were etched in the records from the start. Zachary K. Jamison will serve as chief of staff, guiding the bureaucracy. Jarek Maddox will guard the vault security as its iron hand, and Nathan Argigen, dubbed the morale officer, would be tasked with keeping spirits intact in the decades of confinement to come. The rest, by design, would be chaos. Order wrestled from uncertainty at the overseer's discretion. Yet the walls of the vault hid more than social experiments. Its very lifeblood, power, was a rigged equation. The primary reactor was designed to burn bright for only 20 years, barely half the vault's intended lifespan. When the lights eventually dimmed, the inhabitants would turn to the backup, a steam whistle mini geothermal unit, quiet and efficient, but never strong enough to sustain the full needs of the community. The architects knew this. They built it that way. Compounding the strain, the vault bristled with 3 times the usual allowance of defensive weaponry, a fortress as much as a shelter. Entertainment, by contrast, was all but stripped away. No films, no music archives, none of the comforts the other vaults might have offered. Where joy might have softened confinement, only discipline and vigilance remained. It was never meant to be a sanctuary. It was a crucible, engineered to test what people would become when stripped of choice, starved of light, and surrounded by weapons. At the heart of the vault's grand experiment stood its overseer, the man chosen to shape order from chaos. His name was Brody Jones. On paper, he was no different from 100 other candidates. Healthy, competent, willing. But the scientists who selected him had already marked him for death. Pre-assignment medical screenings revealed a crucial truth. Jones carried a rare genetic disposition towards an aggressive form of cancer. Their projections gave him little more than 3 years from the vault's start date, before the disease consumed him. Far from disqualifying him, this fate made him perfect. In their clinical reports, the researchers wrote with cold certainty, "These 2 events should combine to allow a proper catalyst that allows this project to continue as planned." By 2 events, they meant the overseer's inevitable death and the engineer collapse of the vault's power supply. Together, these convergent crises would ignite the experiment in full, pushing 475 souls to the breaking point. The vault was never about survival. It was about seeing how fast the survivors would fracture. The vault's experiments did not end with social manipulation or power sabotage. In the sterile depths of its laboratories, scientists turned their attention to the manipulation of life itself. One holotape, later recovered from the cloning wing, chronicled their most infamous endeavor. The subject was a man named Gary. The tape described him clinically, as though he were nothing more than raw material. Yet every attempt to replicate him yielded the same chilling result. The clone would open its eyes, take its first breath, and then immediately lash out in hostility towards any non-clone it encountered. Violence was not a learned behavior. It was instinct, woven into the very fabric of their replication. Clone after clone emerged, each more aggressive than the last, until the vault's observation room echoed with the frenzied shouts. By the time the 53rd Gary proved no different, the scientists began to record their doubts. They had filled entire containment cells with snarling duplicates, their identical faces pressed against the reinforced glass, and still the question lingered. What are we supposed to do with them all? The question, like the experiment itself, was left unfinished, buried in the echoing corridors of the vault. Not long after, the experiment reached its breaking point. Gary 54 was brought into examination, and like those before him, he erupted into violence. This time, injuring Dr. Peterson before containment could be restored. The incident forced the staff to admit what they had long suspected. There would be no stability, no successful Gary. These clones were not subjects, they were contagion. The lab entry following the attack was tense, stripped of the usual scientific detachment. It simply noted that some of the existing clones would have to be destroyed to make room for many more tests. The phrase lingered with a dreadful ambiguity, suggesting the cycle would never end, and in a sense it didn't. By the time the vault was rediscovered decades later, its original staff were long gone, their fates swallowed by silence. Only the Garys remained, rooms upon rooms of them, alongside the twisted creatures that had thrived in the absence of order. To step inside was to walk into an echo chamber of violence, where every voice spoke the same word with the same mouth, and every hand reached for blood.